Welcome. Today we will speak about the technologies for the remote work. Today we know that remote is touching all spheres of activity, from economics, business, education to social life. So what do we need to transform our normal work to remote work totally? First of all, we should think about building the remote transition plan. Who will be responsible for the tasks? What kind of timeline do we have? What are main stages of this plan? All this we will discuss. The second, more importantly, to think about how we onboard the remote team, how we will support our members, how we will network the staff when we work totally remote. And then we should definitely think about how to prepare our digital workplace, not only for yourselves, but also for all team members, for all staff. And the last but not the least, we will briefly speak about the remote work technologies. What kind of technologies do you need during working remote? So the first stage is assessment of the current state of business. What do we have right now? What kind of situation do we have right now? First of all, you should definitely think about that you and your staff are on the same page, that you and all your team members have the same opinion, the same technologies to provide your work remote. Then we will definitely need to think about what are challenges could be emerge during we work remotely, and what kind of resources we are having right now and we need to have in future, or maybe what are the main gaps in this type of resources or technologies. To assess the situation and the state of mind of your employees, we propose to use the marketing tool that's called Empathy Map. But this empathy map should be done for each worker that are going to be a member of remote team. First of all, you need to identify what your staff members, what your team members are seeing while they're working remotely. What do they hearing all the time from their colleagues, from their friends, from the workers in the other companies, from their family when they work remotely? The most important to think and to understand what are they saying about their remote work. That is how we identify their pains, their fears, and the gains, what they expected from the remote work. And of course, these pains should be reduced and the gains should be increased and appreciated. To identify the further step and to switch to the remote work, we use Canvas model. Ask your team members to explain and describe the functional tasks that she or he does in his everyday work, not only remote, but current state of activities. And then propose to your managers or do it yourself to describe the approach, how the employee can do it remotely. And that is how you will identify what kind of processes are still done offsite. And is it possible to switch them on totally online? The next, you should identify problems and needs of your staff. Again, ask the team members, describe what kind of problems do they have while they are working remotely. And at the same time, describe the essential activities and resources, how you can meet the particular needs of your staff members or employee. And that is how you can identify the necessary technologies, software, equipment, etc., to switch your activities totally to remote. And the last but not the least is how we can describe and how we can identify our key performance indicator when we are working remotely. So first of all, ask your employee, describe how he or she feels about his inputs in the joint activity. And also, please ask them to describe in which point they feel a little bit underestimated. And that is how you can measure what kind of task, for example, your employee does, and you maybe don't mention how many efforts she or he puts in this particular functions. So, of course, it is much easier to observe of effectiveness of team member or team in general when you are gathering in the office or you see them in everyday life. But when you are working remotely, sometimes maybe from different countries or the continents, it is much harder to observe how much person put efforts in particular tasks. So we believe that this approach can help you to identify key performance indicator in remote work. The next tool that we propose to use is definitely from management. So when you assess the situation and identify the gaps and possibilities for future remote work, you need to set the goals and objectives. What do you want to achieve transition to remote? Is it necessary to go totally to remote? What are your key objectives? What are the key aims for your team? It should be clear for yourself as well as for each team member, because you will not be able to discuss it every day, for example. Then you should definitely think about, is it possible to work remote in the state of emergency? Are your team members are willing or have the opportunity to work in the state of emergency? For example, lack of stable internet connection, lack of electricity, lack of personal space, etc. And next thing, what we should think about to support team work remotely. You need to create the timeline, describe the main phases, describe the task that should be done in each phase, and of course, to set the responsible persons and to identify the key dates or deadlines for each task, or at least two main phases. To divide the task between team members, we propose you to use well-known manager tools, dividing the roles in the team according to Belgium. First of all, do this test for yourself and identify who you are. Are you monitor, evaluator, or maybe you are a good coordinator, or you are a completer finisher? When the team is working offsite, it is better to observe the gaps and the tasks that were unfinished. But when you work remotely, for you as a manager, it will be harder to understand which tasks are missed or which functions are doing not in proper way. That is why we strongly recommend in the very first stage of onboarding remote team, divide the tasks and the roles according to individual possibilities and gains. The next, it's preparing of digital workplace. Not only for yourself, but be sure that each of the team member had proper digital workplace. To prepare it in the good way, we advise you to follow these key instructions. First of all, you should be definitely able to focus on your digital workplace. So for this, at least be sure that you have a space when you can close the door and you will have decent noise control. And of course, you should be very sure that the data that your one more time, digital workplace. It is necessary to be sure that you have digital workplace not only for yourself as a manager, but also for each team member. First of all, you should be able to focus. It means that you have space where at least you can close the door and you will have decent noise control. Also, it is necessary to be sure that your data is secure there, as well as the data of your staff members. Then you should think about ergonomics and control. Is it comfortable to switch between the apps? You have enough visibility and control at your digital workplace? And please think about the distractions. Each person receives hundreds of messages every day. So think about if it distracts you too much, or which messenger should be switched off while you work remotely, or give yourself breaks for check your messages that are not related, for example, to the current work. And of course, don't forget about the additional control. You can add to your digital workplace your favorite stuff like flowers, pictures, maybe light music, or for some people, it could be pets also. And think about the digital boundaries, because the workplace, even in remote work, it is still workplace. So you definitely need to set these boundaries for yourself. So here you can see the main remote technologies that you should think about when you switch totally to remote work. First of all, think about how you will provide the video conferencing for your remote team. Think about collaboration tools and communication tools. What is more convenient, not only for you, but for your team members? And again, what kind of software you all be needed. Think about VPN also, because as we said previously, remote team could be from different countries, from different continents, and of course, for some of team members, it will be needed. Time tracking, timeline is important, timing is important, because when you work digitally, then time limits are a little bit shaping. So you should think for the time management for yourself and for your team also. Project management software became recently very popular because remote is always about the project teamwork. Document sharing software should be secure and easy to use for all staff members. And the last but not the least, again, data securing. You should think about password management software to be available for you, for your team, and for all colleagues during your work remotely.